The Second Sino-Japanese War, also known in China as the 8 Years' War of Resistance and in Japan as the China Incident, was a war that lasted between 1937 and 1945 between the Japanese Empire, the Republic of China, and the Chinese Communist Party. But first, some background information. In the First Sino-Japanese War, Japan had seized Taiwan from the Qing dynasty who ruled China at the time. And in the Russo-Japanese War, Japan seized control of the Manchurian region of China and Korea. Chinese nationalists did not like this and wanted the land returned to China, but due to the ongoing civil war in China, they could do nothing about this. During this time, Japan was ruled by extreme militarists who believed that Japan had a glorious right to expand and rule over all of East Asia. Japan at this time also had very few natural resources and had to depend on the Western powers who controlled Indonesia and Malaysia at the time for materials such as rubber and oil. Meanwhile, China had been busy fighting itself in this period in history, with many warlord states rising up, and the new central government, which was established after the collapse of the Qing dynasty, being accused of corruption after failing to establish democracy in the country. This led to the Kuomintang, a pro-democracy group, to rise in the south of the country and establish control by either bribery or military force over the warlord states. Meanwhile, the Chinese leftists, who had allied with the Kuomintang to defeat the Beiyang government, were betrayed by their nationalist allies. Thousands of communists were massacred in Shanghai, which led them to revolt against the central government, establishing the Chinese Communist Party, also known as the CCP. The invasion of China was justified by Japan by the Marco Polo Bridge incident, which occurred on July 17, 1937, when Japanese troops requested permission to search for a missing soldier in the Chinese city of Wanping, which is a city near Beijing. They were denied entry into the city and, as a result, traveled to the Marco Polo Bridge and fired on Chinese troops, which they justified by the Chinese refusal to allow them entrance into the city. The Chinese military, weakened by years of fighting insurgents in China's brutal warlord and civil war period, while also being led by corrupt and inexperienced officers, struggled to defend against the initial Japanese onslaught. The city of Beijing, China's modern-day capital, fell after a month-long siege and opened the gates for further Japanese advances into Chinese territory. Meanwhile, the Japanese had landed in the Chinese city of Shanghai, which the Japanese expected to fall easily. However, it became the biggest battle in the war, with the Chinese defending the city to the last man. It also became known as the Asian Stalingrad, with the Chinese casualties being around 250,000 and the Japanese suffering around 50,000. Chinese forces eventually retreated after 3.5 months of fighting, resulting in a Japanese victory. The Chinese army continued retreating until it reached the central government's capital city of Nanjing, where they dug in and prepared for the Japanese arrival. On December 9, 1937, the Japanese had reached the city, where they began an all-out assault against the disorganized Chinese lines. After 2 days, Chiang Kai-shek, which is the president of the Republic of China, ordered a retreat from the city, leading it to fall in only 3 days, and for the government to retreat to Chongqing, a major inland Chinese city. As Japanese forces moved into the city, the Japanese soldiers committed the Nanjing Massacre, also known as the Rape of Nanjing. This is a series of Japanese soldiers killing and committing atrocities against prisoners of war and Chinese civilians, with over 200,000 Chinese being killed. After this crucial victory, the Japanese began their push into the coastal regions of China and advanced further inland. They pushed along the Yangtze River, chasing the fleeing Chinese armies, seizing railroads, and important supply chains as they advanced. The Chinese decided to make their stand at the city of Wuhan, one of the few industrialized cities in China, and the Chinese city with the second biggest population at the time. The Chinese defense was fierce. They resisted the Japanese advance for over 4 months and caused over 200,000 Japanese casualties. The Chinese casualties are huge, however, suffering over 1 million casualties. Chinese defenses were only broken after a massive firebombing campaign and the use of poison gases by the Japanese. This battle was crucial, however, in giving the retreating Chinese army time to move supplies like ammunition, food, and other materials from Nanjing to Chongqing, allowing them to resupply their forces from the city. Speaking of Chongqing, an important propaganda piece to note is the Voice of China radio, operated under Chongqing to prevent being destroyed by Japanese bombing. This radio broadcasting service sent signals out around the world to rally international support for China, to provide information for Chinese civilians, and to provide a morale boost for Chinese soldiers. The Japanese again engaged the exhausted Chinese army at the First Battle of Changsha, which brought initial success, capturing key positions in the city. The Japanese thought that this would be a quick capture of another Chinese city. However, Chinese troops attacked the Japanese supply lines leading up to the Japanese forces in the city, effectively trapping them without any new food or ammunition. After running out of supplies, the Japanese were forced to retreat, and during their retreat, artillery which had been placed on the flanks of the Japanese supply line opened fire, destroying their equipment and killing an estimated 50,000 soldiers. This marked the first major Chinese victory in the war and introduced a new strategy known as the lure them in strategy. This strategy was very effective as it utilized China's numerical advantage while minimizing contact with the well-supplied Japanese army. After the defeat at Changsha, the Japanese needed a change of strategy as they realized that this would not be a fast and easy war. They decided to attack Chinese port cities and capture key railroads and prevent material aids and supplies from other countries from being shipped to the Chinese troops, which would starve them out in the long run. The war had become a war of attrition, similar to World War I. Using their new strategy, the Japanese laid siege to the crucial port cities of Nanning and Beihai, which stopped supplies from being transported from French Indochina. China suffered around 30,000 casualties in these battles, to the Japanese around 24,000. This victory was short-lived for the Japanese, however, when the British, using their colony of Burma, modern-day Myanmar, opened up the Burma Road, an inland supply road which connected directly from the port of Rangoon to the city of Kunming, bypassing the need for supplies by sea. At this point, the Chinese thought that it would be a good time for a counteroffensive, seeing their first major victory at Changsha and the Japanese temporarily halting major offensives. So they launched the Winter Offensive from December 1939 to May of 1940. This saw the Chinese attempt at recapturing cities such as Wuhan and Nanjing. The offensive started out well, but eventually got bogged down due to fierce Japanese resistance. This offensive showed the world that China was capable of doing large organized offensives, and this helped restore morale in the Chinese army, even if their offensive did fail. I have only been talking about the Republic of China's army so far, but it is important to note the Chinese Communist Party's actions in this war, especially in 1940. Between August and December of 1940, the CCP launched a major attack known as the 100 Regiments Offensive on Japanese railways and garrisons behind the front line. This offensive was successful and destroyed the infrastructure key to supplying the Japanese army. The CCP, throughout all the years of the war, waged a guerrilla war campaign behind Japanese supply lines and was majorly successful compared to the struggling Republic of China army, which is a bit of foreshadowing for the future of China after the Civil War. It is also important to note the music which China was producing and using as propaganda during this time. For example, the March of the Volunteers song, which is an anti-Japanese song about resistance and the people rising up to defend against and defeat the enemy. This song was so significant that it became the People's Republic of China's national anthem after the war. On August 9, 1945, the Soviet Union invaded Japanese-occupied Manchuria in Operation August Storm, while the U.S. simultaneously nuked the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. This would inevitably be too much for Japan, which would surrender to all Allied powers on September 2, 1945. The Second Sino-Japanese War was extremely devastating to China, with around 20 million total casualties, military and civilian. Even after the war, China would not find peace, with it immediately resuming its civil war, which would add another around 5 million deaths. The Civil War would end in 1949 with the Republic of China's defeat and the People's Republic of China's establishment, with the Republic of China being exiled to Taiwan.